Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon here with Israeli News Live. Today is the 18th of May, 2025. And, it's been over 2,000 years ago that King Herod, fearing the birth of a child who threatened his power, ordered the massacre of innocent children in Bethlehem and also, of course, the surrounding areas. Today in Gaza, we see similar tragedy unfolding, not from a king in ancient robes, but from modern leaders backed by global empires whose fear of losing control has led to the deaths of thousands of innocents. The spirit of Herod has returned, and once again, the cries of children rise up to heaven. They made that famous coin there of Donald Trump and Cyrus, making it look like that Donald Trump was a modern day King Cyrus, returning the Jews back to their homeland. Something that's quite not biblical for today. In fact, much of what was fulfilled in prophecy was fulfilled 2,500 years ago when Cyrus actually carried out Artaxerxes and Darius's decrees. But I thought it was kind of fitting, though, that they should create a coin much like that of the one that I have on the screen for you now, of King Herod and Benjamin Netanyahu. These two men have more in common than you could ever imagine. Both of them fearful of losing control, fearful of losing power, and willing to kill to remain in power. Netanyahu, since 2019, when he spoke before the Knesset, demanding that Qatar be allowed to continue to send large sums of cash to Hamas to keep Hamas in power. After all, he could not have his kingdom dare be threatened with a two-state solution. Sounds a lot like King Herod, doesn't it? Wise men came in from the east, and when they came following a star that the Messiah had been born. Well, Herod was not going to share his glory with a child, especially a 2-year-old child. That's what, as he gathered together all the wise men of that day, told him that the child should be around 2 years old. And so, bent on finding Jesus, he figured the best thing to do was to kill every single child in Bethlehem and the surrounding territories from 2 years old and under. Netanyahu, concerned about his kingdom being unraveled, a two-state solution, concocted his own plan. And with the help of a few higher-ups in power, like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, part of his thugs that were in his own government, they concocted a plan and did just like King Herod. Although there is really no direct proof for it, much like Herod killed his own family, Netanyahu permitted the same to happen to the Jewish people on October the 7th by standing down for 8 hours, fully knowing, according to the Egyptians, that he had ample opportunity, knowing that an attack was coming. He even knew that there were going to be between 200 and 250 hostages taken. Even Jonathan Pollard, who so bitterly hates the Palestinian people, admitted as much. One of his own friends, a helicopter pilot, sat there and waited for 6 hours for permission to take off. knowing already, within earshot of the screams and cries and gunfire. Of course, then they carried out the Hannibal doctrine. You might as well call it the Herod doctrine. Kill your own so they don't take any more hostages. Well, you'd already made sure that the ones that were meant to get away had gotten away. It's only the few babbling ones that didn't know anything about really what was going on that were still stuck inside of Israel. And then to make sure that no one ever knew anything about anything, the gunfire began to go. The Hannibal doctrine was set in order. The festival, I guess, was unexpected, but nonetheless, you just took and bombed all the cars of Israelis that were trying to escape. More Israelis would have survived that day had these things not happened. So, Mr. Netanyahu, I do believe that the coin is very fitting. A tribute this should be given to you today. Now, as we continue on, I want to now look into the very things that have happened over the course of time for the last 18 months as you have murdered the people of Gaza and consented to their deaths, and your military paid quite handsomely to do so. Much like Herod did as well. If you look at the writings of Josephus, even when he was going out of power because he was dying. In fact, like yourself, he also, one of the longest reigning kings of Israel, or Judea, I should say. You as well, 17 years in office, Herod 32 or 33 years, something like that, that he was in power. But when he was dying, he was so hated by his own people that he massacred enough people so that the nation would mourn and everyone would think it would be for him. Your own nation hated you so bad that over 50% of them were ready to riot and everything else to overturn the government because of your judicial reform, putting the power of the government into the far right religious groups and stripping all of the constitutional rights of Israelis. But when you saw that was threatened, you started your own Bethlehem slaughter of children. Your very statement in this video right here about Amalek
You must remember what
is also clearly a statement of killing children. Listen.
Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember and we are fighting. Our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza and in all other regions in Israel are joining this chain of Jewish heroes, a chain that has started 3,000 years ago from Joshua ben Nun until the heroes of 1948, the Six-Day War, the 73 October War, and all other wars in this country. Our hero troops, they have one supreme main goal: to completely defeat the murderous enemy and to guarantee our existence in this country. We've always said, never again. Never again is now.
Well, for one, you have imprisoned your neighbors. You have done the most evil to the people in the land. Not to mention, it's not even biblical for you to be there. I've done some very interesting messages proving this, and I'm doing a series on those. In fact, I'll probably redo some of those because of the audio difficulties I had in other videos. But this picture here on Fact Box was 15 months. At one point, the buildings were standing and just blown out by a lot of different bombs. Even 3 months after this photo here, it's even more devastation. When I interviewed this gentleman right here with Tassim, he was sitting there in one of those little, just partially blown up buildings where just a downstairs room was there to get out of the direct sunlight as the people went up and down the stairs in behind him, you know, and it was just horrifying to listen to what he had to say there. The blockade of food and water, everything, the evils that you're doing, the children that are dying. His own children, he had two already killed thus far in this war, one by sniper, the other by a bomb. You talk about your brave men fighting in this battle. Doesn't take much bravery to fly over the sky and drop bombs, but I'm sure it's hard for them to sleep at night. I'm sure the PTSD of your soldiers targeting children, as you so famously have your 2 shots, 1 kill t-shirt in Israel showing a pregnant Arabic woman and a sniper rifle's scope on her stomach. I wanted people to see the truth of who you really are like. So as we look at that, and then we look at what Moses says here, and a stranger shall you not wrong, neither shall you oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You might want to apply that to Germany, to Europe, mainly during the World War II, under the Holocaust. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child, but you do that anyway. If you afflict them in any wise, if they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. My wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. But you've not cared one single bit. Like Herod, in the case, we read here in the story where Herod, where he got angry, he felt like he had been mocked by the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. You've done the same. Just the estimates that come out of Gaza at 50-something thousand, and over 20,000 are children alone. I'm sure Herod is not even as dirty as you have become. You sit there and you talk about in your interviews how you care about the civilian population, but you don't. For those of you that are listening, I want you to look at this little clip here from Corey Beko. I don't know if I pronounced her name correctly. She's talking about Herod and when he built the Caesarea palace of his, it also became a port. I want you to think about this in terms of Trump and Gaza, because besides King Herod being like that of Netanyahu, we still have a world leader on this scene that is heavily backing Netanyahu, and that's President Donald Trump. Before that, it was, of course, well, we won't even go into time before that. But anyway, you also have European leaders backing, many leaders backing him, but no one has backed Trump. Nothing like that of Donald Trump. First, listen to what Herod did here.
Having no natural shelter from storms. Herod did this by constructing 2 huge stone breakwaters that enclosed a 3.5-acre area of sea. The breakwaters extended a third of a mile out into the ocean and were about 200 feet wide so that ships could dock and unload passengers and cargo. And the shorter breakwater even boasted towers. At the sea entrance to the harbor, it's recorded that Herod erected 6 colossal statues, 3 on either side. The city itself is named after the first proper emperor of Rome and the man Herod had worked political deals with, Caesar Augustus. And a city named after the emperor and built by Herod the Great had to be illustrious. History records that Herod built the city not with local materials, but with expensive, impressive white stone. Fitting to its name, Herod constructed a large temple to Augustus on a hill of the city, and a massive statue of the emperor to live inside it. He built Caesarea's famous theater that has been excavated and is still used today, a hippodrome for sporting events, and numerous public buildings to support a grand lifestyle for Caesarea's population.
And we could go on and on and on with that, but that's to kind of give you the backdrop, right? And then Israel also has, of course, this video here shows that even though they give Trump this nice Trump Heights, Ramat Trump, called the Trump Heights there, but they are working on it. Right now, everybody just lives in a bunch of little makeshift housing. But it's not even that so much as what they really did for Donald Trump. And what Trump is doing now, or what their plans are still yet to come. When Trump himself released this particular video of Gaza, listen.
Donald's coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one.
We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
Riviera of the Middle East. That's what Trump called it, right? Listen to what he had to say here in this particular news broadcast here by the PBS covered.
The Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades, and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people.
Oh, they're wonderful people. And they're shot and killed. They're shot at. You know, even when Gaza was trying to peacefully protest coming out to the fence, remember that a few years back? And then Israel sent snipers and started shooting and killing medical workers, journalists, children, wounding, maiming them, using special made bullets that would just cause the most horrific of damage. All along, why Herod sits here and smiles with all his gloating going on. You know, it's a shame to think that at one time I stood with Israel to such a point, and yet now to see such evil that goes on in this country. Um, this here, I want to play this clip here for you as well from Netanyahu.
Experiences, I think, in Mosul, in Fallujah, in Afghanistan, I think you can appreciate the efforts we go through in dense urban fighting when terrorists are targeting civilians who are hiding behind civilians, how difficult that is. We do our best to avoid civilian casualties, and we did that yesterday with that building as well.
Mr. Prime Minister, the arguments about how careful Israel have been are familiar ones to your critics. And in this case, with 181 Palestinians dead, 52 of them children, there's significant criticism. Amnesty International has asked the International Criminal.
In this case here, it's a different particular case there, but 180 something people were killed. 52 of them were children. And he goes on to make light of the fact that, well, you know, you've got Hamas hiding behind all of these Palestinians, but we try not to get them. You try not to get them. What do you call this? Seriously, what do you call it? We're all of it was every one of these places, Hamas and little children were hiding behind all of them, so you had to kill all these little kids. Are your snipers that doctors have reported? 40 different medical professionals have reported children being shot by snipers, sometimes twice, once in the head and once in the chest. Oh, that's okay. After all, you're Herod the Great of modern day, right? That's what you've become. And then you have people you call Netanyahu frequently makes claims of anti-Semitism. Critics say he's deflecting from his own problems when Jewish people stand up like this here and they call for the freedom of Palestine. You know, the thing is, Jewish people are recognizing that you have imprisoned and you have tortured these people. You saw your soldiers sodomize them, and you make that all okay. That's perfectly fine. I've watched the Knesset arguments. Smotrich in there, sitting there, pounding his chest and everything, angry because somebody's going to bring a charge against him for the sodomy treatment of Palestinians. You torture these people to death. But when the hostages are set free, they're not tortured. They're not abused. They're not starved even, which really makes me question just how much is out there. But you will silence, just like Herod the Great silenced all of his, those people that were in the way that caused problems and things like that. You're no different. You silence those too. And Shireen Abu Akleh, an Al Jazeera reporter killed by Israeli forces, is another journalist shot just while doing her job. In Gaza, I forget, it's like a crazy number. More journalists have been killed in Gaza, clearly marked, even bulletproof vest, everything, and in some cases, right out targeted by Israeli forces. Journalists killed. You don't want any foreign press inside of Gaza. Not that many of them are willing to tell the truth. Many of them still side with Israel. It's sickening. Shows how much control you have over these people. Very, very sickening. Then you have here Al Fakhrizadeh, who was assassinated, the Iranian scientist. Anything that even opposes anything about Israel or the possibility, you just have them all killed off. So it's no wonder. It's no wonder. And now we have this new article coming out. Trump administration working on a plan to move 1 million Palestinians to Libya. 1 million Palestinians to Libya. Do you really think they want to go? Like Mutassim said in the interview I did with him, this is our home. We've been pushed from here to there to everywhere. You think you'll give them anything better? No, you won't. All these lies that they're going to have a great life and stuff. Well, you've basically flattened Gaza to try to force them out. Now you're trying to starve them to death. And now you want to move 1 million of them to Libya. It's kind of like I watched this charade about we've lifted sanctions on Syria now. We have this new president there, and now it makes it look like, oh, the Syrians are great. These Syrians are wonderful people and everything. Now everything's coming together. Yeah, it's coming together, even though, like I said before, the Club of Rome may not have been intended what you hijacked it to be. But isn't it interesting in section 7 there? Libya. Palestinians going to Libya. United States taking them there. Israel's going to control that whole region. War with, Syria, Iraq. They want to go after Iran. I'm just waiting to see how that all plays out. Russia getting all of Eastern Europe, including Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Trump getting his dream too. Canada and Greenland, looky there. All part of the plan. And the big plan, too, was Turkey always wanted to be part of the European Union. They will be, I'm sure. So these things are getting crazier all the time. I just don't know what else to think of. But I will say this, though. And I got so many notes that I'd made for myself here. Rome installed a puppet king in Judea back in 37 to 4 BCE. He was obsessed with consolidating power, executed family members, priests, and rivals. Well, Netanyahu kills off any of his rivals and just to stay in power, it seems to be. At least some of his critics believe that, including churches, mosques. Yeah, think about that. When it comes to your own family members, October the 7th is a good case for that. Built the Temple Mount, Caesarea, and more legacy of architectural built on blood. Feared the prophesied king of the Jews, leading to the massacre of the innocents in Matthew. And I kind of can't help but wonder sometimes, maybe that's what Netanyahu fears too. Maybe he is worried that Jesus could come back. Can't have him come ruling here in Jerusalem, can we? Don't worry, though. He said his kingdom was not of this world, Mr. Netanyahu. You can quit worrying about that. Just there's so much that can be said. And of course, Netanyahu's longest serving prime minister uses extensual threats to justify war in Gaza, West Bank raids, and political crackdowns. Propagates a messianic national vision, often framed in biblical language while contradicting Christ's teaching. Yoav Gallant, there's a good one there. Israel's former defense minister declared a complete siege on Gaza, quoting, no electricity, no food, water, fuel, and everything is to be closed. These policies mirror Herod's logic, control the population by eliminating the possibility of resistance, even at the cost of innocence. So whether it's Netanyahu or his cohorts, they all run the same thing. And of course, Herod was installed by Rome, in case you didn't know that. And Netanyahu and others received billions in support from the U.S. and Western powers, enabling unrestrained military action, just like Caesar of Augustus did for Herod. He turned a blind eye to Herod, so too do world powers today, under the guise of self-defense and fighting terrorism. The moral cost? Children in Bethlehem were slaughtered for one man's fear. Children in Gaza killed for the security of the state. And the early Christian voices, people like St. Origen, saw Herod as a type of Satan seeking to destroy Christ's light. St. Augustine warned of tyrants who cloak themselves in law but act in fear and darkness. So, I tell you, we're in a very terrible time without even saying. I'd like to also mention real quick to those of you that are listening, I haven't talked about LifeWave in quite some time. We do have a special right now going on where you can get X39, X49, and you get the SP6 for free. And I want to say this to you because we recently, in one of our meetings, which we'll have one tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, it'll be www.x39hub.com. Love for you to come join us tonight. But at our meeting last week, we did not record that meeting there, but we had an amazing testimony from one of our brand partners. And she shared with us that as she turned 60 years old, and I won't call her name for her privacy, but if you came to the meeting tonight, you'd get to meet her. She's normally there. And I'll just say Kim. I won't say Kim's last name there, but Kim, she just turned 60 years old. And she's been on X39 now, the patch that helps to stimulate your GHKCU copper peptide, which causes your stem cells to come back to life. Because at 60 years old, you are nearly done producing stem cells. And Kim was very concerned. She shared with us that she was very concerned about her getting as she was getting older now. And she said, but she gets this annual thing. I forget how it works with her, with her company or however it works there. But she's able to get her blood test done, a full panel blood test. And that blood test also can determine what condition you're in. Basically, breaking it down, you're really 60 or you're older than what you really are. And, it can really go in either direction. It can be very bad or it could be nice and positive, really somewhat positive. She said, I've been on LifeWave patches now for a year. She said, Steve, when I got the results back, it was the best birthday present I could have ever gotten. It said that my biological age based on my blood work was like a 51-and-a-half-year-old woman. And she said, I largely attribute that to the LifeWave patches. Well, I think that Dr. Sellers, who also signed up with us, we've had 5 doctors, by the way, that have signed up with us. Dr. Tesla, Dr. Sellers, Dr. Gunter, and let's see, who else do we have out there? We have Dr. Jolene, and I know Dr. Darnell she's a PhD in biblical studies, not in medical, but we have one other doctor, I forget who it was now, that signed up as well. Every one of them very convinced of how well this can work. It works slowly. It works over time. But anyhow, if you decide to come in as a brand partner, that's where you could earn income if you so choose to do so. In other words, if you're planning on sharing the product, just select, I would say, one of the 3 above, core, advanced, or premium. Basically, what happens is if you go to one of those higher levels, you save even more money than if you are a preferred customer. Now, you have a choice to be a preferred customer, or you have a choice to even be a retail customer. Retail customer, though, is going to pay $150 a month to use a patch that stimulates your stem cells into activating. If you become a brand partner, though, I think the premium package, even though it's $1,750, you got to keep in mind that's setting you up into a very powerful business profile with everything you have need of. But the company gives you every bit of the product in return and at a much greater discount. So you've got enough patches already to last you a year if it's just for you personally. Easily. And where could you? And I encourage people, go a year. The testimonies are phenomenal for people that have been a year. The company founder recommends 1 month for every decade of your life. If you started in the past, many of you that did start, I've been seeing some of you are about to fall off the pumpkin wagon because you don't keep your subscription up to date or you haven't renewed your once a year $25 fee. That's important. Be sure to go double check that because if you're doing it as a business, that part is important. Now, if you're a preferred customer, none of that matters. But I would go at least with a core. And you can email us at banoonx39@gmail.com. We'll be glad to help you if you need help getting signed up. But at the very bare minimum, I'd do that. Or you can always just shop and you can buy the product. And like I said, become a preferred customer. Right now, SP6, Dr. Jolene shared with us about SP6, and she said it's not just weight loss. Doesn't just curb your appetite. She said it helps balance your hormones in your body, and that's what causes you to lose weight. It's an amazing product. So maybe try that bundle there. You can get that bundle for as low as $179 just by becoming a preferred customer. When you add it to the cart, it says $279 there. But all you got to do is when you get ready to go to check out there at your cart there, if you've added it, which it's not letting me add it because I'm on my own website. But if I did, I would go there and I would choose preferred customer. So I would get the discount and buy it for $100 less than what it's retailed for you there. Anyway, I'm Stephen Benoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Thank you for listening.